Hello everybody, Adam Nicholas here for WhatCulture Wrestling, coming to you fresh off the back of a rather bizarre Money in the Bank, I think it's fair to say, but more importantly was the thing that followed after it, as we got the debut episode, Chapter 1 of the brand new documentary all about The Undertaker, The Last Ride. Now at this point you've probably seen all of the adverts for this being advertised numerous times throughout the various different episodes of Raw and SmackDown and the build up towards Money in the Bank, but finally this episode has aired and we've been able to fine-tooth comb our way through it and come up with all of the interesting tidbits from the documentary, episode 1 or Chapter 1 as they're calling it. We're going to get to see so many different things throughout this documentary. It looks very exciting and interesting indeed, but don't just take my word for it, let's get into it, and here are 10 things we learned from WWE's Undertaker, The Last Ride, Chapter 1. Number 10. The trademark eye roll was ad-libbed. Now while the majority of the focus for this particular episode was centered around WrestleMania 33, the build-up, the match, everything involved with it, there were still a few tidbits that we got around the subject matter that were quite interesting, and one of them came in the first few minutes. Now we all know the trademark Undertaker eye roll, don't we? The rest in peace eyes as he does the tombstone and he wins the match and he's all dead and stuff. A massive staple of The Undertaker throughout the years, but apparently this was all ad-lib during a match he had with Greg the Hammer Valentine on TV, and he was choking him in the corner, and as he was doing it, he noticed that there was a camera person just staring up towards him and fully focused in on him. So he decided, why not do something a little bit weird, and decided to roll the eyes in the back of his head, and he didn't think any more of it. The act had Bobby Heenan on commentary saying, "Look at that monsoon, he's got no eyeballs," and all the sort, even though that doesn't really work, but still it was impactful nonetheless, and apparently it was even more impactful behind the scenes, because as he went behind the curtain, not thinking any more of it, people were going mad for it. The whole backstage was a buzz and they were excited because apparently this was something they were all into. Number 9. His Roman Reigns worries started at the 2017 Royal Rumble. The Undertaker believed he had absolutely no business being in a match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and then the doubt about his abilities and his own self-worth at this point kind of started creeping in around the Royal Rumble 2017, where there was a bit of an exchange. As you remember, in the match those two come head to head, they have a bit of a collision, Undertaker gets eliminated by Roman Reigns, and even then he felt like maybe he wasn't going to be up to the task. Throughout the episode we're getting an insight into a man who was kind of coming to terms with his own physical frailty. The dead man has been gone for so many years, he's had various surgeries, his body just isn't what it used to be, and he's kind of trying to come to grips with that, and he's talking to the camera, and at one point he can't even look the camera in the eye, if you know what I mean, where he has to look to the side and say, sort of, what happened to me? I used to be a tough son of a bitch, what happened to me? Like, he can't even figure out who he is these days. And if you didn't already know about the caliber of the man Mark Calloway, then this should sum it up perfectly, because the dead man was actually saying that he felt like if he wasn't able to deliver that match, if he was already going to be taking a spot of somebody on the WrestleMania card and he couldn't live up to the billing, then it was like he might as well be spitting in the face of that person, and it's hard to disagree with him, to be honest. Number 8. His pre-WrestleMania 33 workout was scary. 2 days before the big match with Roman Reigns, the dead man returns to the Performance Center to try and just generally test out his body, see if his muscles, his joints, and his bones, if anything, are going to be up to the task. And he says it himself that it scared the shit out of him. Throughout the footage that we see of the dead man working out, doing shoulder shrugs and bench presses and the likes, he obviously narrates the whole thing, and it's weird to hear how much of a sort of disconnect there is between a guy who's trying so hard to get himself physically in condition and in shape, and a guy who is just mentally worried to death. He says he's never sure about doing stuff like this because in the build-up before it, if he's working too much just before the matches, he's worried that he's going to start having a panic. Like, is he completely going to break down? Is he mentally going to feel like he's not ready to do this? And is that going to send him into a complete spiral of self-doubt? Number 7. WrestleMania 27 was a turning point. The dead man says it was at WrestleMania 27 when Triple H was raining down some barbaric chair shots on him that he realized that his body just wasn't able to deal with this anymore. The recovery from those type of matches was taking way longer than it used to, and this was really all starting to build up and take a massive toll on both his life and his general health. And to make matters worse, he was walking into that match with some serious hip issues. So he was already going to be getting surgery after the match, but he still had 30 minutes bell to bell with Triple H in a brutal match to get through before he could even get to that. He did, however, say that once he'd recovered and he had some of the surgeries, that he felt good about the matches that followed against Triple H at WrestleMania and CM Punk the year after. But ultimately, even though he felt good about those, he knew during that match with Triple H the first time round, that something clicked mentally for him. Number 6, he ribbed Vince for showing compassion at WrestleMania 30. Now, for anybody who saw Undertaker's appearance on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast, you'll remember that he was talking about WrestleMania 30, about how he got concussed and how he can remember nearly nothing about the match against Brock. It's all a bit of a blur, and obviously it didn't end very well because he got rushed to hospital immediately after the match. Now, what you probably don't know is that when The Undertaker did in fact get rushed off to hospital in an ambulance, behind said ambulance was a black SUV chasing them all the way there, and inside that SUV was Vince McMahon and Brock Lesnar, because they were seriously concerned about The Undertaker's health. When he'd come backstage after his match with Brock, they said he was grinning from ear to ear like he'd just drank a bottle of Jack Daniels and was kind of like loopy, essentially, so they knew that something wasn't right. Michelle McCool, who obviously is The Undertaker's wife, also voiced some similar concerns. She said when she got to the hospital, the dead man couldn't even remember his own name, never mind anything else. But apparently, he did manage to keep his sense of humour just a little bit, because despite the fact that Vince was so worried and concerned and came rushing over to see him, the dead man, as soon as he saw him, said, "Don't you have a show to run?" Which, I mean, of all the times to try and rib the boss and get away with it, I guess when you've nearly died for him in the ring is probably a pretty good time. On a more serious note though, it should go to tell you just how worried Vince McMahon actually was, because he literally left WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year, to go and make sure The Undertaker was okay at a hospital. Number 5, why Triple H can relate to his cameo struggles. One thing the Last Ride documentary makes very clear indeed is that there's a massive mutual respect between Triple H and The Undertaker. These two have been down the road so many times, and there's obviously a solid relationship there. It's clear for everyone to see, and some of the most poignant moments actually in this documentary come from Triple H. And one of the more notable things that Triple H mentioned here is the fact that he could relate to the dead man, and how taking time away from the ring means that going back into the ring ends up taking more of a toll on your body, because he started to go through a similar thing when he was winding down his career a little bit in 2011-2012. Triple H said that training 3 or 4 months intensely before a major match, then having the match, and then having to come back and recover from all of that, while then trying to nurse those injuries into probably the next match that you're going into, he said he found that whole experience much more difficult than just wrestling night after night. So with that in mind, he can kind of really sympathise with The Undertaker and everything that we see him going through, and it's probably why in the documentary, when he finishes the match at WrestleMania 33, who's the first person waiting for him behind the curtain? It's Triple H. Number 4, Triple H spotted his self-doubt at Mania 31. Now, as you can probably imagine, The Undertaker is the kind of guy who keeps his cards fairly close to his chest, and we do get a little tidbit from Bray Wyatt, who comes onto the documentary to say that he didn't actually realise just how ravaged with self-doubt that The Undertaker was, because he kept it to himself, he kept quiet about it, and pretty much nobody else in the company knew what was going on with him except for Triple H. Now, I guess for a man who's pretended to be an undead zombie for the last however many years, it should come as no surprise that he's got a pretty good poker face. But Triple H did know what was going on, and he kind of got the feeling that despite the fact that he was coming across as all business in California for WrestleMania 31 before the match, that maybe the dead man might just need a bit of a pep talk to get him going. After all, this was the first WrestleMania back after that disaster of a match against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. So as we see on the behind the scenes footage, Triple H goes over to the dead man who's preparing to go out for his match, kneels down to him, grabs him, and basically just says, "Show them who the fuck you are." And it's a powerful moment, man, to see these two guys backstage at Gorilla just kind of taking that time with one another. Yes, there's cameras there. Triple H probably wanted to be on the camera. That doesn't really matter. What you see here, and I guess what you're presented with, is one guy just trying to remind another guy of just how good he actually is. It seems to work. The dead man seems to get his swagger back, and you could probably argue that for the rest of 2015, it seemed to reinstill some confidence in him as well. Number 3. Screw your camera guy. Early on in the documentary, we see the dead man arriving at a hotel in preparation for his match at WrestleMania 33. He's standing at the desk while he's waiting to be served, and who should come up and slide next to him without saying a word but Roman Reigns. And when the dead man finally clocks that Reigns is there out the corner of his eye, he just turns to him and sort of says like, "Really? You just couldn't keep kayfabe for 10 minutes, man." Like, the cameras are on him, Roman Reigns is the whole time is laughing. It's kind of a nice moment actually to see. There's like a bit of camaraderie between the two. They just look like two pals who are like standing in a dinner queue somewhere at school, kind of ribbing each other. And to be honest, I think the thing that was most interesting about this interaction, for me anyway at least, was just how confident Roman Reigns was around the dead man. Like, you might get these ideas where it's like the old guard and the new guard, and there's a bit of a divide and there's loads of respect. I'm sure there is that. But these are still two guys who have to work together, and That just seemed like a great camaraderie between the two. The dead man, when he starts questioning him about kayfabe, you'd imagine another guy might have been like, oh crap, like sorry. But Reigns is just like, nah, screw you, camera guy, I don't care. Like, I'm just here to talk to my pal. And if that's going to be a problem, that's a problem. Number 2, it makes the Reigns match look so much more epic. Now, as somebody who was actually there in person for WrestleMania 33 and watched it through his own eyeballs, albeit a little bit drunk, still, this match really disappointed live. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't have huge expectations already and there was question marks aplenty about it, but it really felt like Undertaker was past it, like to the point where there was no coming back, and it just felt sad to watch it, to be honest, because Reigns and him were trying to do things and they just weren't working because literally there was limited physical things he could actually do. One thing that WWE have managed to achieve, and I'm not surprised because they are literally the best at making documentaries and the likes, they have turned this match into something that actually looks pretty amazing, to be honest. They've managed to cut around all of the mistakes, all of the flubs and the errors that were kind of, well, really sort of heart crushing, to be perfectly honest, when it came to this, because nobody wanted to see this, but that's what we got. But in the documentary, the little highlight package they put together, there's none of that. Like, if you've never seen the match between Roman Reigns and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 33, 1, you definitely don't need to watch it, but 2, just watch this highlights package and pretend that's what it was, because that was the kind of epic encounter and big match feel and kind of satisfactory return that we were hoping for from the match. We didn't get it, but it kind of looks like what I wanted in this video package. And if that's not a good thing, then I don't know what is really, because in real life, it was a mega disappointment. And number 1, what's on the next episode? Now, it's kind of funny this, because obviously we know in retrospect that WrestleMania 33 wasn't the end for the dead man's career, but as we see it on this documentary, and certainly the end of this episode, it kind of ends on a sort of happy note. The dead man has finished his career, he's retired, and he's sat down on a settee with his wife watching back the match, albeit cringing slightly at the match against Roman Reigns that he's watching on the telly, but ultimately he's happy. Like, the relief is there, he's moving on. That's going to be the end of the chapter, but as we know, there are a lot more twists and turns to come. Chapter 2 of this documentary series is going to look into the disappointment that we clearly see on Mark Calloway's face at the end of episode 1, where he's watching the match back and he's severely disappointed and felt like his final match in WWE, certainly as he thinks it's going to be, is a massive letdown and a massive disappointment. We're going to delve into that a bit more, his annoyance about all of that, but ultimately as well, how he feels that was a bit of redemption that he gets as his recovery to becoming the Undertaker once more at WrestleMania 34 to take on John Cena. So there you have it, those are the 10 things that we learned from Undertaker's The Last Ride documentary, and to be honest, if you're just a wrestling fan in general, I have been for the last however many years, or maybe you're just an Undertaker fan, whichever it is, you should definitely go and check this out in full. Yes, there's some 10 great tidbits there, but really, it's just fascinating to watch this. In the meantime, let us know your thoughts of everything in this video in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this piece at whatculture.com/WWE. That's by Jamie Kennedy. Go and check that one out too. You can follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. You can follow me on Twitter if that's your thing at It's Adam Nicholas. Or if you just want some more videos, there should be some just over here. I'm Adam Nicholas. This has been WhatCulture Wrestling. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.